Hi, my name's Nicole Lefevre. This is my artifact analysis presentation for the MAE program, and specifically for um, the practitioner research class, MAE 670. And thank you for being here and listening. I want to start off by saying I hope these artifacts represent, me as an educator, what I've learned and how I've grown in this study at National University. The artifacts are all showing program learning outcomes listed right here as program learning outcomes 1 through 4. I'll be displaying these through every course that was taken throughout my journey through the MAE program, as well as the identifiers, the IDM. So here's my artifact analysis table with the bookends being right here, the MAE 610, as well as going all the way to the MAE 670. I was, I had the privilege of, this is my 20th year teaching, so my credential and the classes way back in the day from when I got my credential, they counted towards, I applied and was granted the induction credits for National University. So I'll be displaying some artifacts from things that I use teaching every day, as well as my emphasis was on higher education. And so those are these EDA classes right here in the middle of my study. I also took the MAE 691, ITI 660, and I am a primary educator. Most of my experience has been in the primary grade, so I felt like when I designed my courses of study that it was really important to put a reading course in here, especially with all the new science that we have and the research done to learn from. So starting with program learning outcomes, number 1, integrating advanced approaches to instruction, assessment, and learning using digital tools and skills. The first one I want to present is part of the induction credits. This is a big part of me as an educator, me as, what I feel like my classroom environment should be in, my goals for educating not just my students academically, but also educating them as learners. So ClassDojo.com is a big part of my classroom. I aligned this with PLL1 because it has multiple purposes. They all integrate advanced approaches to instruction and lessons to increase student participation, understanding, and management. I allocated this as a mastery competency level. Not only, do I know about class management and I know how to introduce this program, but I feel like it's always necessary to evaluate, meet the needs of the learners and the families I have in my classroom, use the different management techniques to make sure that students are successful, and evaluate behaviors and skills, whether they are mastered using this type of program, how I initially set it up, or if I need to provide behavior interventions, academic interventions, and change the way I use this program. So just to give an example, in the morning, we have a morning circle. They get a point for being here, sharing what's got them feeling good today. Throughout the day, they get points for both social and positive points for both social and academic reasons. At the end of the day, we take a look at our scoreboard as individuals and as a class. And then they mark in, we're an Avid school, so they mark in their folder. So it's a reflection piece based on their score to let their families know how their day went. There's also a piece in Class Dojo to have that communication with their household. So if it's messages that are just meant for the individual, that can absolutely be done, or important messages for a group like our January presentation. So this is an important piece of making my classroom run smoothly and something I wanted to include as an artifact. Another artifact that aligns with PLO1 is read aloud lessons. So I put this as a PLO1 alignment because lessons integrate advanced approaches to instruction using the digital tools as well, increases participation, understanding, and class management too. How I do a lot of my lessons is still based on that. I do modeling, explicit teaching, the we do, and then they do their own independent practice on their own. So I allocated this as an introductory competency level because at the beginning of every school year, you're just beginning to meet those students. And when you meet them, depending on their behaviors and their skill set, that's how I base my lesson, even though it always has these components in it, the way I introduce these components. The book, what type of background knowledge they need, the vocabulary, integrating digital tools such as the read alouds. I wish I can get my hands on every good piece of literature, but there's so many that I have provided right here. There's always digital links. So then these aren't really made for students as decodables to practice. This type of read aloud lesson is meant for more of a comprehension based skill set goal. So those read alouds in a digital format are perfect. And then also to build those connections by taking virtual field trips or giving them more background knowledge and vocabulary. Right here, there was a link it was a science video on hibernation. So this read aloud in particular lesson is based on the book The Midden. So of course, I love this acronym that I include, kind of wraps up, how I do every lesson. It's basic. So you have the book, you have the content, you have activities to build the background knowledge and to engage them throughout the story, as well as activities after. So this was handing out some manipulative. So every time they heard about an animal going into the story, I would have a student physically put an object in the midden. This was an activity, that we do this together, and then they do activity at the end, being able to sort what animals went into the midden and what didn't. And then a wrap up culminating activity when we reread the story. Down here, there is, let me look at my screen, sorry. So they had their own like vanilla pudding. And then when I reread it, they would put a marshmallow in every time they heard an animal go into the midden. So, that was also developing competency level because I'm evaluating their comprehension skill. I'm meeting the learners exactly where they are, creating an approach so then they really can comprehend the story. Another PLO1 example was from MAE 670. This applied practitioner research and customized study. So the analysis presentation is with a goal in mind that we show competency of being a student, not just, educators and being able to teach it, but us continuing our learning and valuing the research process. So I aligned it with PLO1 because I have the opportunity to demonstrate my learning through a digital format, and demonstrate, through a practitioner research process that integrates advanced approaches to instruction, assessment, and learning. I allocated this as mastered because not only did we get introduced to what a practitioner research study is, we researched ourselves, evaluated the research, but then we were able to create our own learning plan. The proposal of what type of practitioner research we would do in our classroom and the why. And so that's something that I valued because mine was based on different instruction, how to do that with phonics reading content, and then with the measurement of how do my early readers improve on their reading skills. Then moving on to PLO2, design learning experiences that include learner characteristics, principles, and customized learning and assessment as learning. This is from MAE 691, the social emotional learning and relationships. I created a lesson that had SEL component of growth mindset. This aligned because it designed learning experiences specifically to learning characteristics, their individualized learning of what they need and assessed the given goal. I allocated this as develop because, yes, it shows the understanding that students need the constant practice of both their academic and emotional well-being from an introductory level, but that also this lesson in my classroom, I would make sure that they're always reflecting on this SEL strategy that they've learned and applying it throughout the school year. So then their emotional well-being, they're developing throughout the whole school year. Because I know research shows it can critically play a role in the growth of the student's ability to grow as a learner and develop as that love for learning, which is, of course, our end goal. With PLO2, I also have an artifact from ITI 660, Identity, Inclusion, and Equality. This is a collaborative learning video that I appreciated during this course. It just shows when we integrate culture and experiences in our classroom, they feel a sense of belonging and respect the teacher for showing that they matter. I aligned this with PLO2 because it describes several school initiatives that created experiences that meet the needs of different learning characteristics. Opportunities are given based on how students learn. I allocated this both as and developed because the inclusive practices for English language need to start from, just knowing those basic foundations of how to communicate and growing on their communication. We know that English language learners, from research, we apply that to the classroom. And in the past, we used to have different practices on how educators felt to reach them the best. And it's ever changing because the ongoing research is constantly showing us what ELL learners need. The model also works well when learning and discussing character and social skills. So, whenever, you immerse learners or anybody into a campus culture, it's important to identify what the culture's mission and vision are and to grow their character and social skills. I allocated this also as a D because the collaboration piece, it affects higher student achievement, self-esteem, and motivation. It gives a chance for all voices to be heard. And I feel like that's an important piece to any classroom, no matter what type of learners you have. PLO2 is also described in my artifact from ARL 645, Developing Fluency in Reading. This is a fluency lesson, and I also included that PLC reflection. So it aligns with PLO2 because the scope and sequence involves several fluency research-based activities based on different learning characteristics, and the M competency, because not only do we know the different standards, but we need to use differentiation strategies to meet those students' diverse needs, and then to always evaluate it. So this is where the PLC process comes in, intervention. So, making your lesson, but also making it available that you're giving every student what they need. So here's like a phonics lesson from Secret Stories, and these all change based on where my student skill set is, making sure the lessons have that I do, we do, you do approach. So then we know that if there needs to be an extension on the lesson, if they're not getting it by that third time and able to answer comprehension questions, we need to backtrack for some learners. And that PLC piece is also, this is a link. I did a lesson reflection during a PLC meeting with a colleague where I videotaped my fluency lesson with students, and then we reflected about it. We evaluated the lesson. Moving on to PLO3, applying practitioner research methods to study and inform instruction. This is from one of my induction pieces, the PLC process. During my 20 years of teaching, for 15 of those, I've been at PLL. So I've taken a great part of PLC meetings, not only at my grade level, but at my site and then at the district level as well, being on district level, curriculum, adopting new curriculum. Sorry. So it used to be more based on unwrapping the standards, and now PLC development is, just based on learning, and it's that continuous cycle. So I allocated this with PLL3 because it's research-based goals and instruction, and this always helps inform me and my team of future instruction and planning. Also at the mastery level, because yes, you implement the differentiated instruction to reach the need of all students, but you're constantly evaluating and collaborating with colleagues, and not just on my own for the teaching strategies and methods. From EDA 640, the introduction to HE higher ed management, I included a research piece that I studied. I thought this question was really powerful. If accrediting groups and funding agencies had insisted early on that colleges should provide evidence of student learning and growth, how do you think higher education would have developed differently? I think if we would have, saw students as kind of like a human resources did, like we're trying to draw them in, what's going to draw them in, really having that piece, and then evaluating their learning. Colleges they would have increased enrollment. There would be a huge desire and engagement for the campus and the programs they offer, as well as, a high rate of success and graduating class. So PLL3, because the educational research done directly affects the vision of college programs in today's society. Part of the artifact is introduced competency level, because this was just the beginning for me of learning about the history of our educational system, how there's enrollment spikes and declines. And then at the developed level, just that component that there's 21st century learners and they're shopping around. And so they have a need for entrepreneurship, and that does have an effect on learning and their desires of what they want to get out of their college education. In MA 610, so now we're moving on to PLL4, developing reflective practices that are grounded in current learning, science, research, professional ethics, and including pathways to continuous growth. I have 3 courses that I want to show artifacts for. The first one being the very beginning of where my MAU journey started, the practitioner research study. I really appreciated how National University lets you map out coursework that would best suit us as educators. So I aligned this with PLL4 because the class introduced me to what practitioner research question is, the importance of reflective practices, while always striving for continuous growth. I allocated this as introduced competency level, because I was just learning how this whole process works. I also appreciated, all my college experience before this was in person. And so this was done, through the style of National University. And I appreciated the discussion with classmates and professors that was done. And that was a huge component of each class. In EDA 641, leading and managing change, the artifact comes from a leadership study, and the implementation of that study, me reflecting on my own leadership in my classroom, on my campus, at a district level. It emphasizes the role of culture in organizations. So I align this with PLL4 because I'm always reflecting on best practices, providing a professional and supportive environment for my students and colleagues. I allocated this as developed. Leadership for the one part was as developed competency level. This is the part where, leadership and change management always need to be evaluated, how it directly affects the relationships within my classroom, my own learning community and campus, and even the campus, how the campus culture affects our surrounding community in our town. Leaders should act upon their beliefs and values, and norms should always be followed. And so in that, I did this also as a mastered competency level because after researching, it's that reflective piece. How do you apply it? How do you evaluate your research and apply it to my own classroom? Um, and so these are examples of how the culture reflects how change can be implemented and expected to be carried out in meaningful learning tasks. And so I identified 3 leadership skills with the belief that these skills is from the value that I see in building and developing relationships with others. That shows in my classroom. We develop a class family promise at the beginning of the year. We always, on Monday mornings, we have a morning circle. What's got you feeling good? We do a little drumming dance routine to Can't Stop the Feeling. And then they do a journal reflection piece, and that's just a chance for me to get to know them and for them to acknowledge, they bring a lot of things into the classroom. And what I want them to see is there's always good in the classroom and to appreciate being there and to recognize that. I also put a pacing plan in here because absolutely the end result is with a goal in mind that they will develop as learners and also that love for learning. Next for PLO 4 is from EDA 643, Community Development in Higher Education. There are some artifacts that show community practices right now with the campus I work at. So providing that positive approach to social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education campuses involves creating a welcoming environment where all are given a chance to succeed. This aligns to PLO 4 because the internal and external community practices are professional and research-based to increase development engagement with all. I allocated this for as mastery because, they're always not only done, but they're evaluated and new opportunities can be created for the needs of your campus. So these opportunities can be events, issues, accomplishments, milestones, and challenges within your campus and community or department. They should always be addressed. There should be a communications plan, and it should always be analyzed how we're reaching out and communicating with our campus and the culture of the campus. So these are just some ways we communicate it on our campus, making sure parents know the ways, what is communicated, like back to school needs, with an outreach to our community. We get a lot of snow where we live, so we have a outreach program with senior citizens. We invite the community in on after school hours for events like Ugly Sweater Bingo. And there's an events or programs, we have a ski and snowboard program after school on Thursdays. And so that does wrap up my artifact analysis presentation. I thank you, and I hope I've done a good job on reflecting my growth and achievements during my course of study for the MAE at National. Thank you.